Welcome to True Sound Radio. Welcome to the show, Lyndon. You have a bass-driven house style, and I think we would all love to know more about your sound. So what can you tell us musically about your unique take on the genre?
Honestly, when it comes to making music, 99% of the time, my style ends up being an accident. That's what music's all about. I sit here all day and I like to get my sounds out of the ordinary. I don't like to sound like everyone else. It's all about experimenting to try and stand out. And the music industry is pretty saturated. So
Totally.
honestly, I like to push the boundaries with my sounds. And that's typically how my house music ends up sounding a little bit heavier because I love processing my sounds.
Cool. What can you tell us about your history learning to produce and DJ? What inspired you to get into the business? And how did you get from there to here to now?
So my dad was always in music. I grew up in band rooms. He's been in multiple bands as I grew up. So I was always around music, and I played some instruments when I was younger in band and stuff like that. And when I finally turned 19, found some guys like deadmau5 and Skrillex that were just making these sounds I never knew were possible.
Yeah.
After hearing guitars and clarinets and saxophones and stuff, hearing those bass womps that Skrillex was putting out and stuff, just I don't know, it really opened up my eyes and got me into DJing. So I bought some gear and found someone that was making music, and that's how it all started. I just started messing around and found that I really enjoyed it.
So in terms of finding someone to sort of help you learn how to play the instrument, the technical instrument, what did you look for in a person to help you? What were you just trying to find anyone who would help, or like was it sort of like, I like the way they do their DJing?
So I was in band in high school.
Okay.
And there was this one kid that basically, while I was listening to Skrillex and deadmau5, like Ghosts and stuff had just come out. This must have been like 2009, I'm guessing. Okay. And he was making this like Linkin Park dubstep remix.
Nice.
And I was
very like, hybrid theory of him.
yeah. It was just the time. It was the transformation time, right?
Yeah.
And basically I just talked to him for a couple of days and he got me set up on the program, and that was that. I took off on my own afterwards.
Do you find it's a sort of a trial and error kind of experience? Like, how do you, when you're sort of on your own trying to figure out what all the knobs mean and stuff, how do you go about doing that?
That's literally exactly what it is. It's twist this knob. What did it do to the sound?
Right.
Twist this knob. What did this do to the sound? And just an additive of those things over time, and an understanding eventually of what they do. And in combination, you can get some pretty crazy sounds actually quite simply. Yeah.
It's interesting. Do you actually create do you do that recording of sounds and then modifying them like now? How do you create new sounds from your surroundings?
So yeah, like sometimes we'll record voices in here. Even though I've played instruments in the past, I don't really record any instruments. I haven't opened up those in a while because I have those instruments on my computer, so I can write them in my computer, record them in my computer, and then I'll resample them, do some crazy saturation or something with them, record them back down, and then just keep working it around until you get a crazy sound out of it.
Huh. So actually, speaking of instruments, you apparently play several of them. So what are they, and what was the first instrument you learned? How many do you know? Tell us a little bit about that.
So I'd say the first, real instrument I learned was the clarinet, probably in about grade 5. I was a band geek.
Yay.
From grade 5 to grade 12. So I played band the whole way through. Started with the clarinet, moved on to the saxophone, and joined jazz band in grade 9. And then I started a band with some of my friends in grade 11. I played lead guitar and did like some backup vocals and fun stuff. Then they needed a bass guitar guy, played a bit of bass guitar. And that was that. So I'd say, bass guitar, saxophone, clarinet.
Which one do you feel the most comfortable on? Is that the clarinet, or do you feel better about the saxophone?
I mean, technically they're the same instrument. They play the exact same almost. So the transition between both is pretty simple. It's just different amounts of air intake basically.
Okay.
I'd say I'm more comfortable on the clarinet though.
That's fair. I guess you've been playing it for a really long time at this point.
Yeah. Yeah. I haven't picked it up in years though. Like I said, I can just open up my computer and I've got a clarinet on there.
Right. Yeah. And I mean, it's probably a pretty good MIDI file too of the example of a clarinet. But does having the versatility though of being able to play instruments and understanding how that works, does that change the way that you look at production, or do you think it factors in any way?
Honestly, I don't, well, there are ways that it could transfer over, but the way I produce is so sound design driven.
Okay.
Not really, like when you're playing an instrument, you're thinking of MIDI and movement of notes. When you're
Right.
producing tech house, the only thing that's really moving usually is your bass line. So really that's got the most movement in it. And the rest is all sound design. It's not as much like playing an instrument. So I'd say it doesn't transfer over that well.
So in that case, could you describe a little bit, unpack what sound design means for you? What are you creating when you're creating a particular sound design for a track?
I'd say, yeah, my goal is just to break sounds.
Okay.
So turn something that
new.
sounds good into something that when someone hears it, they'll be like, what the heck is that sound? And why do I like it?
Right.
That's basically what I'm doing is, yeah, grabbing certain frequencies of a sound and just stretching it, or slowing down a sound so much that it sounds broken. Just doing out of the ordinary things that people wouldn't expect to make a sound.
So I guess then it's sort of like your music surrounds a particular standout sound in certain ways. Then I'm just trying to describe more about the musical aspects of what this means when you're listening to something, when something pops out of the music. Is that what you want people to hear, or is it sort of all around what they, like the whole of it?
Yeah, it depends. Usually like in my songs, there'll be one definitive sound that's meant to grab the person's attention. But really when you're doing sound design, I'll have 5 or 6 layers of sound within that one sound. But to the listener's ear, all 6 of those things working together sounds like one sound. So
right.
Yeah, that's
interesting.
That's pretty much what sound design is. And any song you can listen to on the radio or anywhere, that's happening. You just don't know it. Yeah, it'll sound like if the average listener hears 5 to 7 sounds per song, but some of my songs have over 100 sounds in them. So
that's so interesting. That's like, have you ever seen those things where the first and last letters are the same, but the middle is all messed up and you can still read it? That's kind of what that reminds me of, actually.
That's exactly what it is. That's exactly what it is. Yeah, it's sounds working together for a common goal to the listener. Yeah,
that's really cool. It's a cool brain thing to know. You've played a few festivals here in Canada. Which was your favorite experience so far? And is there a festival gig on your wish list for the future?
All right. So yeah, I've played Snowbombing twice. That's got to be my favorite. That was so much fun. Back in the day when I lived in Kamloops, I won the Electric Love competition, DJ competition. So I got $1,000 cash in my hand and I got to play at Electric Love. And then my buddies throw this dope festival called Arrival every year that I play at as well. Nice. My favorite would have to be Snowbombing though. That was sick. I got to play right before Felix Cartel and Goldfish. So it was a good time. And then my wish list would probably be Shambhala for sure. It's it's like I could say other ones like EDC or something, but I don't know. I'd prefer to play Shambhala and just be local, and the experience there seems so great. I bought a ticket last year and I guess it ended up getting canceled for 2 years, but I know eventually I will make it there.
Yeah, no, for sure. I've heard lots about it too. I actually used to live in Ontario, so I have not gone to Shams ever. And I think that from what everyone says, it's one of those otherworldly experiences. So I totally get why you'd want to play that show as opposed to something more like commercial, well, internationally commercial, like, CDC or something. That makes total sense. So what are you aiming for when you go into the production studio when it comes to like creating a mood or an energy for your track? We talked about the sound design, but like, what do you want your audience to feel, or like, what kind of energy do you want them to have when they're listening? And what gets you excited about a track when you're really getting the real mood that you want out of it?
Gotcha. So like when I walk into the studio, I have one of two goals. I either, if I'm in a really creative mood and I'm feeling like something is going to end up on paper that's going to sound good, I'll go straight into the writing process. I'll either finish up a song I'm working on or start something new if I'm feeling really creative.
Mhm.
But there's tons of times also as a producer, you're in here all the time where you're not going to feel that inspired. So I
Right.
like to split my sessions into A and B sessions. A is the writing session, and B is the watching tutorials, working on sound design, organizing samples, doing all the things that you don't want to do when you're in that creative mood. So
Right.
I find that really splitting those helps me stay productive so that you're not always trying to force the creativeness out of you. And
Right.
if and then you're also more prepared for when you are in that creative mood. So I find splitting my studio sessions into those two zones have really helped me. Yeah, for sure.
That's cool. That's cool. Um, your tracks are very like, they actually remind me a lot of Toronto sounds that which makes sense because you said you like Dead Mouse. But I think there's just something like really gritty, like down, like it makes me want to G-step, that kind of thing. So, like, are you trying to make people dance, like, or you just want them to be like, you feel like, I don't know, there's just something like in the ground, like about it.
So like honestly, my number one thing is the bass line, and I like it to
Yeah.
be groovy and movie. So I always listen through my songs if there's a moment where I feel like if I was dancing, I had to stop to think and get back on groove, then it's not good enough. So
Right.
I
Yeah.
keep making it until it's got that groovy flow where you won't feel out of place ever on the
For
dance
sure.
floor. Yeah.
It definitely has that. So that's great. Recently, you released a track with another Vancouver producer, Yuri, called Do It Like. So, what was it like collaborating with her, and what can fans expect from this track?
So yeah, we both took Cosmic Academy together, me and Yuri.
Okay.
So I reached out to her. I was like, we got to collab. Like I've been a fan of yours forever. I used to see her at celebrities DJing all the time.
Oh, that's awesome.
And so she sent me over this idea that she had, and it was already decently polished for sure. So I dove in, and that night I was feeling pretty inspired. So it turned into an A session pretty quick. And I'd say after 10 to 12 hours that night, I stayed up till 4 a.m. or something.
Oh, wow.
We pretty much had the song exactly where we wanted it. And after that, it was just doing polishing, mixing, mastering for the next couple of weeks. I think I have 3 versions of Do It Like on my computer. I have a really heavy version that I've made that I might put out for free in the future as like a LinkedIn VIP or something.
Right.
And we were targeting a different record label before we signed it to UFO Records, where it's signed right now, and they wanted new vocals. So I wrote a whole new vocal line, and then they didn't end up signing it. So we went back to the original vocals and signed it with UFO Records.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah, there was a lot of extra time put into this one for sure.
Yeah. It sounds though like the initial like composition time was a quick turnaround though. Is that
Yeah.
typical for you, or was that sort of an unusual turnaround?
I find when I get a collab idea from someone, typically right away I can get ideas down on it pretty quick. And then it's honestly the longest part for me is label hunting, trying to find a record label that'll sign it. It's hard to get through to those guys. Sometimes they're really busy. They get a lot of demos. So
Yeah. I imagine now as well, with everyone just at home composing stuff, like it's probably overwhelming, their inboxes. But
oh yeah.
yeah.
I've actually found that if I go onto LinkedIn and find the A&R of the record label or the record label owner, I can reach out to them faster on LinkedIn than through their demo drop.
Interesting. Good tip.
Make a personal connection at the same time too.
Yeah, that's right. LinkedIn's a great resource for sure. What's your favorite thing about playing live shows now that they're maybe on the horizon again? What do you love about them?
Honestly, I know lots of DJs say this, but my favorite thing is undoubtedly the crowd.
That's fair.
There wouldn't be a show without them, and they bring 99% of the energy in there. Holy crap. And if you can hook into that energy from the crowd and connect with them while you're DJing, those are where shows really start to pop off for sure.
Yeah.
For example, like I remember I was in Vegas one time, and like the club was awesome, but then Calvin Harris came on stage, and before he even hit play, the club was just erupting. So it just proves that, like he just has such a reputation, and the crowd really brought the energy there. Like I couldn't believe how much energy was in that club.
Yeah, that's incredible. I mean, I think I've talked to a few DJs over the years who say that, their choices about music depend on the crowd. And I think that it's a real reciprocal relationship. So yeah, that's really, really fascinating, actually. Do you also like sort of change your idea about what you're going to play based on how the crowd's feeling? Or like, do you have this sort of like emotional connection with them that you can read their feelings about it? Or like, how does that work?
Totally. So I've actually, like through the past, I've DJed a ton of weddings and weird events. And I think that's really where I got that skill of where to go with your music to follow a live crowd. Like even at a wedding, I'm like sitting there like counting the cowboy hats, like how many country songs should I play tonight? So like you can tell also, like in a club, say you play a song and you see a bunch of people leave the dance floor to go get a drink. You're like, okay, well, that song didn't quite work. I'm not going to play other songs that are related to that one.
Right.
And you go a different direction with your set. And also the same thing, the opposite direction. If people pop off to a specific song, you know exactly where to go after that as well.
Right.
Yeah.
And weddings are really versatile. So that must take a lot of skill, actually.
Totally. Those are the hardest. Weddings are the hardest for sure.
For sure. I can imagine.
Also for your soul when you got to play the chicken dance.
Okay. Can you name one low point musically during the pandemic and one high point? I just want the full spectrum of, how this has affected artists this year. So if you could just share one from either end, that would be good.
Sure. Yeah. So I'd say one low point off the bat was that I wasn't able to go to shows anymore, and going to shows really inspires you to make music. So
yeah.
Like say I went and saw a DJ that I never expected that I would love, and I go home the next day and now I'm inspired by his music, and I'm making something that I would have never expected I would have made because of what he played the night before and what I liked about it. So I find that like you really have to keep yourself inspired and do a lot of research, and it's a little bit trickier to do during the pandemic.
Yeah.
High point for me would probably be like definitely just having the extra time to stay home and make music though. So at the same time, you're also not hungover. You got that whole day, that whole extra day to make music right there. Actually, maybe there's a lot of people hungover every day out there probably, but
there might be. Yeah.
Yeah, so
but yeah, for sure, I get that. I think there, some people were mentioning too that they caught up on so much sleep, because like when you're going to play shows or you're going to shows, you're up till like 6 or something, and then that in itself, even if you're not drinking, is a lot of lost sleep in there. So I think it's been good for everyone on that front.
I think it's going to be hard for me to get back in that schedule. Actually, I'm going to be a tired old man boy when the shows come back.
Yeah, I think you won't be alone there.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, I'm like 9 o'clock bedtime, I think. Yeah, 9 o'clock sounds like bedtime.
It's not that bad for me, but I totally get what you're saying.
Yeah.
Anyway, do you have any parting words for our audience? Anyone you'd like to thank?
I'd like to thank, first of all, True Sound for having me on for this interview. I've got a mix coming on True Sound as well that's coupled with this interview. I've got probably 10 of my personal IDs that you guys haven't heard yet in there, so make sure you check that out.
Very exciting.
Cool.
Very exciting. Well, thank you so much for being here with us today, and we look forward to the time when we can see you live.
Sounds good. I'm excited for it as well.
Thanks so much.
No worries.